Daniel helped Sophie climb onto a milk crate so she could reach into the dumpster more safely. The smell wasn't terrible since the cold had frozen most of the garbage, but his heart still ached watching her small hands sort through bags. She worked with focus, checking each item carefully before moving to the next. He held his phone flashlight steady, providing better light than the dim parking lot fixtures. "My dad works at Nashville General Hospital," Sophie explained as she searched. "He's a janitor on the night shift. He does double shifts sometimes because we need the money. I stay with Mrs. Chen next door, but she fell asleep watching TV. I snuck out." Daniel processed this information. A single father working night shifts, a daughter left with neighbors, financial struggles. He knew that life. He lived a version of it himself. 3 years ago, his wife Amanda had walked out, saying she couldn't handle motherhood anymore. Since then, he'd been both mother and father to Rachel, working as a freelance graphic designer so he could maintain flexible hours. Some months were tight. Some months he ate less so Rachel could eat more. He understood Thomas Bennett's situation more than the man might realize. "How long have you been out here?" Daniel asked. "Maybe an hour," Sophie admitted. "I checked 3 dumpsters already. This is the 4th one. There are 2 more behind the other building." An hour. A child alone in the cold for an hour. Daniel's jaw tightened. Not from judgment, but from empathy. He knew what it meant to work so hard you didn't have eyes in the back of your head. He knew what it meant to trust neighbors because you had no other choice. Thomas wasn't a bad father. He was a desperate one, doing his best in impossible circumstances. "Tell me about the ornament," Daniel said, hoping to keep her talking and distracted from the cold. "What does it look like?" Sophie's face brightened even in the dim light. "It's a little angel made from felt and lace. Mom used to make ornaments every Christmas. She'd sell them at craft fairs. The angel has yellow yarn hair and a white dress. Mom made it the Christmas before she got sick. It was the last one. Dad keeps it in a special box, but he was cleaning out the storage closet yesterday, and I think it got mixed up with the donation bags." The story painted a picture Daniel could see clearly. A grieving man, trying to simplify his life, accidentally giving away his late wife's memory. The horror Thomas would feel when he discovered what happened. The way Sophie must have panicked when she realized it was gone. "Does your dad know the ornament is missing?" Daniel asked gently. Sophie shook her head. "I only noticed tonight when I wanted to look at it before bed. I checked the box and it wasn't there. I remembered seeing him throw stuff away yesterday. I figured maybe it got tossed by mistake. I didn't want to tell him, because he'd feel so bad. I thought I could just find it myself and put it back." The reasoning made sense in a child's mind. Protect your parent from pain. Fix the problem yourself. Take on adult responsibilities because you've already seen too much loss. Daniel recognized that maturity born from tragedy. Rachel had it too, that way of being older than her years because circumstance demanded it. "Sophie, that's really brave," Daniel said. "But it's also dangerous. Your dad would rather feel bad about the ornament than have something happen to you. You understand that, right?" She nodded slowly. "I guess. I just miss my mom so much. The ornament was like having a piece of her. I can't lose it too." Daniel's throat tightened. He reached into the dumpster, helping her search more efficiently. They worked in silence for several minutes, the snow continuing to fall around them. Christmas music drifted from someone's apartment. Car doors slammed as people returned from last-minute shopping. Normal holiday sounds, while 2 people searched through garbage for something priceless. "Daniel." He turned at the sound of his name and saw Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor from across the hall. She stood in the back doorway, wrapped in a thick robe and slippers, her white hair in curlers. "What on earth are you doing out here?" she called. "Helping a friend," Daniel called back. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Sophie." "Sophie, this is Mrs. Patterson." The old woman's eyes narrowed with concern. She shuffled closer, her slippers crunching in the snow. Progressed narrative draft and transition to next chapter. "I'm at around 500 words for chapter 1. Let me wrap it up and move to chapter 2. Child, you're half frozen. Both of you, inside. Now." "We're looking for something important," Sophie protested. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. "I don't care if you're looking for the Holy Grail. You can look from inside where it's warm. Come on. I'll make hot chocolate. Daniel met Sophie's eyes. She's right. We should warm up, and we need to find your dad. Can you tell me his phone number? Inside Mrs. Patterson's apartment, warmth enveloped them like a blanket. The old woman had her heat turned up high, and the smell of cinnamon filled the air. She disappeared into the kitchen, while Daniel helped Sophie out of her wet jacket. The girl's teeth chattered despite her brave face. Mrs. Patterson returned with 2 steaming mugs and a thick Afghan blanket. Drink this slowly, she instructed Sophie, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. You too, Daniel. Now, start from the beginning. As Sophie sipped her cocoa, she told the story again. Daniel watched Mrs. Patterson's expression shift from concern to understanding to determination. The old woman had lived in this building for 20 years. She knew every family, every struggle, every small victory. Her apartment was filled with photos of other people's children and grandchildren because, as she often said, when you care about people, they become your family. Thomas Bennett, Mrs. Patterson said thoughtfully. Apartment 2B. I see him leaving for work sometimes. Always looks exhausted. The poor man. Do you know him well? Daniel asked. Not well, but enough. He moved in about 2 years ago, right after his wife passed. Cancer, I believe. He's private, keeps to himself, but always polite. I've offered to watch Sophie before, but he said he had arrangements. With Mrs. Chen, Sophie supplied. She's nice, but she's old like you and falls asleep a lot. Mrs. Patterson smiled. Old like me. Well, I suppose that's fair. But falling asleep when you're supposed to be watching a child? That's not acceptable. Daniel, do you have Thomas's number? I was just about to ask Sophie for it. Sophie rattled off the number from memory. Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. His concern grew. He's probably in a patient room where he can't have his phone on, Sophie said. Sometimes he doesn't check it until his break. That's at midnight. Daniel checked his watch. 11:30. Sophie, does your dad know you're out? No, she admitted quietly. Mrs. Chen doesn't know either. She thinks I'm asleep in my room. We need to tell them, Daniel said firmly but gently. Your dad needs to know you're safe. Can you take me to Mrs. Chen's apartment? Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Dad's going to be so mad. And so sad about the ornament. Mrs. Patterson sat down next to the girl, taking her small hand. Sophie, honey, your father loves you more than any ornament. More than anything in this world. Right now, he needs to know you're safe. The ornament? We'll find it. I promise you that. But first, we make sure your dad isn't worried sick. How will we find it? Sophie asked, hope creeping into her voice. Because I'm going to call every able-bodied person in this building, Mrs. Patterson declared. We'll search those dumpsters top to bottom. We'll check every donation center in Nashville if we have to. But we'll find it. That's what neighbors do. That's what community means. Daniel felt something shift inside him. He'd lived in this building for 2 years, but he'd kept mostly to himself. Focused on work, on Rachel, on just getting through each day. He exchanged polite greetings in the hallway, but never really connected. Now, watching this elderly woman mobilize to help a child she barely knew, he realized what he'd been missing. Connection. Community. The kind of support that turns strangers into family. Let's go find Mrs. Chen, Daniel said, standing. Then we'll figure out how to reach your dad. They left Mrs. Patterson's apartment and went down 1 floor to 2B. Daniel knocked on the door marked Chen. After a moment, an elderly Asian woman answered, blinking sleepily. Her eyes went wide when she saw Sophie. Sophie? I thought you were in bed. I just checked on you an hour ago. You checked on the pillows I put under my blanket, Sophie said softly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen. I snuck out. Mrs. Chen's hand flew to her chest. Oh no. Oh no. Your father. I must call your father. I already tried, Daniel said. He's not answering. Mrs. Chen, I'm Daniel Carter from 3C. Sophie is safe. She was looking for something in the dumpsters. I found her and brought her inside. Mrs. Chen looked torn between relief and panic. Thomas will never forgive me. I should have been more careful. I should have stayed awake. This isn't your fault, Daniel assured her. Kids are sneaky when they want to be. What matters is Sophie is okay. But we do need to reach Thomas. Do you know when his break is? Midnight, Mrs. Chen confirmed. He always calls to check on Sophie then. What do I tell him? The truth, Daniel said simply. Tell him Sophie is with me and Mrs. Patterson in 3D. Tell him she's safe, warm, and fed. Tell him there's no emergency, but he should come home when he can. Mrs. Chen nodded, wringing her hands. Sophie stepped forward and hugged the old woman. I'm sorry I worried you, Sophie said. I just really needed to find my mom's ornament. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. She cupped Sophie's face gently. Your mother would want you safe more than anything. Come, let's wait together. They returned to Mrs. Patterson's apartment, now joined by Mrs. Chen. The old woman made more hot chocolate while they waited. Daniel sent Rachel a quick text checking on her. His daughter responded immediately that she was fine and asking if he was okay. He smiled at her concern. Even at 9, she looked out for him as much as he looked out for her. At exactly midnight, Mrs. Chen's phone rang. She answered immediately. Thomas? Yes, Sophie is fine. She's safe. But you need to come home. No emergency, but please come home. She's with some neighbors. We're in apartment 3D. Mrs. Patterson's place. Yes. Okay. Hurry safely. She hung up and looked at the group. He's leaving now. He'll be here in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt longer than they should have. Sophie had stopped shivering, but her anxiety was obvious. She kept twisting the blanket in her hands, rehearsing what she'd say to her father. Daniel found himself nervous too, unsure how Thomas would react. Would he be angry? Embarrassed? Defensive? When the knock finally came, Mrs. Patterson opened the door. Thomas Bennett stood there, still in his work uniform, his face pale with worry. He was younger than Daniel expected, maybe early 30s, with light brown hair and tired eyes. The moment he saw Sophie, his whole body sagged with relief. Sophie, he breathed, crossing the room in 3 strides. He dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms. Baby, what happened? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Dad, Sophie said, her voice muffled against his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thomas held her for a long moment, then pulled back to look at her. Mrs. Chen said you snuck out. Where did you go? Why? Daniel stepped forward. Mr. Bennett, I'm Daniel Carter. I found Sophie behind the building. She was searching the dumpsters for something. Thomas's confusion was obvious. The dumpsters? Sophie, why on earth would you? His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. His eyes closed, and pain crossed his features. Oh no. The ornament. The angel ornament. Sophie nodded, tears streaming down her face. I looked in the special box tonight and it wasn't there. I remembered you cleaning yesterday, and I thought maybe it got thrown away by accident. I just wanted to find it, Dad. I didn't want you to feel bad. Thomas pulled her close again, his own eyes wet. Sophie, that ornament isn't worth your safety. Nothing is worth that. If I threw it away, I threw it away. Your mom would never want you out in the cold, alone, searching through trash. Never. But it's all we have left of her, Sophie sobbed. No, Thomas said firmly. We have each other. We have her love. We have memories. Those are what matter. I'm so sorry I've been working so much. I'm sorry you felt like you had to fix this alone. That's my job, not yours. Daniel felt intrusive watching this private moment, but Sophie spoke up before he could excuse himself. Daniel helped me look, she said. And Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen. They all helped. Thomas looked up at the 3 adults in the room, seeming to really see them for the first time. Embarrassment colored his cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all this trouble. Thank you for taking care of her. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Mrs. Patterson said kindly. But you do need to sit down and have some hot chocolate. You look exhausted. I should get Sophie home, Thomas said. It's late and it's Christmas Eve, Mrs. Patterson interrupted gently. And you're among friends. Sit. 5 minutes won't hurt. Thomas hesitated, then slowly sat on the couch, keeping Sophie close. Mrs. Chen handed him a mug. He took it with shaking hands. I never meant for this to happen, he said quietly. I try so hard to keep everything together, to make sure Sophie has what she needs. But I'm just one person and there's never enough time or money or... We understand, Daniel said, sitting across from him. I'm a single dad too. I know exactly what you mean. Thomas met his eyes, and something passed between them. Recognition. Solidarity. The unspoken understanding of men trying to do impossible jobs alone. How old is your daughter? Thomas asked. 9. Her name's Rachel. She's upstairs asleep. My wife left 3 years ago. It's been just us since then. I'm sorry, Thomas said. That must be hard. Cancer is harder, Daniel replied. I'm sorry about your wife. They sat in silence for a moment, two fathers who'd become unexpected mirrors of each other. Mrs. Patterson bustled around, refilling cups. Mrs. Chen sat quietly, her hands folded. Sophie leaned against her father, her eyes drooping with exhaustion and relief. The ornament really is gone, isn't it? Sophie finally asked. Thomas stroked her hair. Probably, baby. I'm sorry. Maybe not, Daniel said. Everyone looked at him. Marshaled narrative momentum toward hopeful chapter conclusion. I need to wrap up this chapter and move on. I'm around 500 words. Let me continue with the momentum of hope. Mrs. Patterson mentioned organizing a search. If it went to a donation center, we might be able to track it down. If it's still in the dumpsters, we can find it. It's worth trying. I can't ask people to search through garbage for me, Thomas protested. You're not asking, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. We're offering. That's different. Daniel checked his watch. Almost 1 in the morning. Christmas Day had arrived, though it didn't feel festive yet. He looked at Thomas, saw the exhaustion in every line of the younger man's face, and made a decision. Why don't you both come up to my place? Daniel offered. I've got leftover pizza, and Rachel would love to meet Sophie in the morning. You could crash on my couch instead of walking back to your apartment. It's been a long night. Thomas immediately shook his head. I couldn't impose like that. You've already done so much. It's not an imposition, Daniel insisted. Look, it's Christmas. Neither of us has family nearby. Both of us are doing this parenting thing alone. Why spend the holiday isolated when we could share it? Even if it's just pizza and whatever random Christmas movie is on TV. Sophie perked up. Please, Dad. I'm not even tired anymore. And I want to meet Rachel. Thomas looked torn. Pride warred with loneliness and exhaustion. Daniel recognized that battle. He'd fought it himself countless times, refusing help because asking felt like failure. But this wasn't about pride. This was about 2 little girls who deserved more than lonely Christmases. I'll be there too, Mrs. Patterson announced. Someone needs to make sure you boys actually feed those children something besides pizza. I'll bring my cookies. And I'll come help, Mrs. Chen added. Safety in numbers, yes. Thomas looked around at the 4 expectant faces. Slowly, a smile broke through. Okay, yes. Thank you. That sounds really nice, actually. They gathered their things and headed upstairs. Daniel unlocked his apartment quietly, hoping not to wake Rachel. The living room was small but cozy, decorated with Rachel's handmade paper snowflakes and their artificial tree blinking with colored lights. The sight made him suddenly self-conscious about how modest everything was. This is perfect, Thomas said softly, as if reading his mind. Thank you. Daniel showed him where the bathroom was, dug out some blankets and a pillow for the couch, and checked on Rachel. She was fast asleep, her dark hair spread across her pillow, one arm around her favorite stuffed rabbit. He smiled and gently closed her door. In the living room, Sophie was already curled up in an armchair, fighting sleep. Thomas sat on the edge of the couch, looking more relaxed than he had all night. Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen had taken over the kitchen, heating up pizza and arranging cookies on a plate. This is strange, Thomas said as Daniel sat in the other chair. I've lived in this building for 2 years. I've seen you around, probably passed you in the hallway dozens of times. But tonight is the first time we've actually talked. I know, Daniel admitted. I've been the same way. Just keeping my head down, focused on surviving day to day. But maybe that's the wrong approach. What do you mean? I mean, we're both fighting the same battles. We're both alone in this. But we don't have to be. Not really. There are people willing to help if we'll let them. Thomas was quiet for a moment. I've never been good at asking for help. My parents died when I was young. I grew up in foster care. Learned to depend on myself because that's all I had. When I met Sophie's mom, everything changed. She taught me about letting people in. But when she died, I guess I went back to old habits. I get that, Daniel said. My parents live in Seattle. They visit once a year, but that's it. My wife's family cut contact when she left. I felt like I had to prove I could handle everything alone. Like asking for help meant I was failing, Rachel. But you're not failing, Thomas said. Anyone can see that. Your daughter is safe and loved. Your apartment is a home. You've got good neighbors. That's not failure. Neither is yours, Daniel replied. Sophie is brave and kind and clearly adores you. You're working yourself to death to provide for her. That's not failure either. That's love. Mrs. Patterson appeared with plates of food. Stop being so serious, you two. It's Christmas. Eat. Laugh. Enjoy the fact that you're not alone tonight. They ate and talked, sharing stories about their daughters, about work struggles, about the small victories that made hard days worthwhile. Sophie fell asleep in the chair, and Thomas gently carried her to the couch, settling her under blankets. Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Patterson eventually said goodnight, promising to return in the morning with breakfast supplies. When it was just the two men, Daniel asked the question that had been on his mind. What do you really want for Sophie? Not just for Christmas, but in general. Thomas didn't hesitate. Stability. A better place to live. More time with her. A job that doesn't mean I'm gone all her waking hours. I want her to have the childhood her mom would have wanted for her. Friends, activities, joy. Not just survival. That's not too much to ask, Daniel said. That's what every parent wants. Wanting and having are different things. Sometimes, Daniel agreed. But sometimes doors open when you least expect it. Sometimes help comes from places you never imagined. Mrs. Patterson mobilizing the building to search for that ornament? That's proof. People care more than we think. We just have to let them. Thomas smiled tiredly. When did you get so wise? About 30 seconds ago, Daniel joked. I'm figuring this out as I go, same as you. They sat in comfortable silence, the Christmas tree lights blinking steadily. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, two families that had been alone were alone no longer. Thank you, Thomas said quietly, for finding Sophie, for bringing her inside, for tonight, for all of it. Thank you for accepting the help, Daniel replied. That's actually the harder part. They talked until nearly 3 in the morning, and then Daniel showed Thomas where extra blankets were. He checked on both girls one more time, then headed to his own room, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope Daniel woke to the sound of laughter. For a moment, he was disoriented, then remembered. Christmas morning. Guests in his living room. He pulled on clothes and emerged to find Rachel and Sophie sitting on the floor near the Christmas tree, already talking like old friends. Thomas was on the couch, looking more rested than the night before. The smell of coffee filled the apartment. Dad. Rachel jumped up and hugged him. Sophie is my age. Well, almost. She's 8 and I'm 9. And her mom died too. I mean, my mom didn't die, but she left, which feels kind of the same sometimes. Daniel winced at his daughter's bluntness, but Thomas smiled. It's okay. Kids are honest. That's good. Mrs. Patterson bustled in without knocking, her arms full of grocery bags. Merry Christmas. I brought breakfast supplies. Mrs. Chen is right behind me. Sophie, dear, your father called her last night to let her know the plans. She's been worried. Indeed, Mrs. Chen appeared moments later, carrying a container of what she announced was rice porridge. Traditional Christmas breakfast in my family, she said. Good for the soul. The apartment suddenly felt full in the best way. Rachel showed Sophie her small collection of toys, modest but loved. The girls played while the adults prepared breakfast. Daniel found himself working alongside Thomas, their movements coordinating naturally, as if they'd done this before. "Your daughter is wonderful," Thomas said quietly. "So confident and kind." "Sophie is pretty amazing herself," Daniel replied. "You've done well with her, especially given the circumstances." Mrs. Patterson overheard. "Both of you have done remarkably well. But you know what makes children really thrive? Community. It takes a village, as they say. You boys have been trying to be the whole village by yourselves. That's too much for anyone." They set the table together, a mismatched collection of plates and cups, but somehow it worked. As they sat down to eat, Daniel realized this was the first time in 3 years he'd had a full table on Christmas. Usually, it was just him and Rachel, making the best of things but always aware of the emptiness. "Should we say grace?" Mrs. Chen asked. "I'm not religious, but it feels right on Christmas." "I'll do it," Mrs. Patterson offered. She reached out her hands, and everyone joined in a circle. "Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for Sophie's safety last night. Thank you for giving us each other when we all need connection so much. Help us remember that we're stronger together than apart. Amen." "Amen," everyone echoed. As they ate, the stories came naturally. Mrs. Patterson talked about her late husband, gone 15 years now. "He was a mechanic," she said. "Best man I ever knew. We never had children, but everyone in this building has become our kids. That's how I think of it." Mrs. Chen shared that her son lived in California with his family. "They visit once a year," she said. "But mostly I'm alone. I like helping with Sophie because it gives me purpose. I understand being needed." Thomas talked about meeting his wife in college. "She was an art student. I was studying business, but that fell apart when my foster parents stopped helping with tuition. I dropped out and started working. She stayed with me anyway. Married me even though I had nothing. She was the best thing that ever happened to me." His voice thickened with emotion. "When the cancer came, it was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. I keep thinking if I'd noticed sooner, if we'd had better insurance, if I'd pushed harder for different treatments. But none of that matters now. She's gone, and I have Sophie, and I have to figure out how to be enough for her." "You are enough," Daniel said firmly. "Thomas, you're doing everything you can. The fact that you're working yourself to exhaustion to provide for her proves you're enough." "But is it?" Thomas asked. "She's searching through dumpsters on Christmas Eve because I threw away something precious. I'm so tired all the time that I miss things. I'm not giving her the life she deserves." Rachel spoke up, her voice clay. "My dad used to say that too. That he wasn't enough. But he is. He reads to me every night even when he's tired. He helps with homework even when he has work to do. He makes me laugh when I'm sad. That's what matters. Not money or big houses or fancy toys. Just being there and loving us." The room went quiet. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. He'd had no idea Rachel paid such close attention or understood so much. Sophie nodded in agreement. "My dad sings to me before bed. The same songs my mom used to sing. He tries to make all my school events even when it means missing sleep. He learns to braid hair from YouTube videos because that's what I like. He's the best dad." Thomas wiped his eyes, not bothering to hide his tears. "How did I get so lucky to have you?" "Maybe it's not luck," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Maybe it's grace. Maybe it's God putting people in each other's paths exactly when they need it most. You two men, struggling alone with the same challenges. These girls, needing friends. Us old women, needing purpose. Maybe none of this is accident." "I used to believe in things like that," Thomas admitted. "Before the cancer. Before watching my wife suffer. I got angry at God. Stopped praying. Stopped going to church. It all felt like lies." "I understand that anger," Mrs. Patterson said. "When my husband died, I screamed at God for months. But eventually I realized something. Faith isn't about believing nothing bad will happen. It's about believing you won't face the bad things alone. Look around this table. You're not alone. Not anymore." What would you do if you were struggling and strangers offered help? Would you accept or refuse? Comment below and subscribe to see how this Christmas miracle continues to unfold. Daniel looked around the table and felt something shift in his chest. These people had been strangers 48 hours ago. Now they felt like family. He caught Thomas's eye and saw the same wonder reflected there. So what's the plan for today? Rachel asked, breaking the emotional moment with perfect timing. I think, Mrs. Patterson said, we need to organize that ornament search. And we need to make some phone calls. What kind of phone calls? Thomas asked warily. The kind that opens doors, Mrs. Patterson said mysteriously. But first, let's clean up breakfast. Then we'll make our plans. After breakfast, Mrs. Patterson pulled out her phone and started dialing. Daniel watched in amazement as she worked through what must have been a mental directory of every person in the building. Each call followed a similar pattern. Warm greeting, brief explanation of the situation, request for help. Not once did anyone refuse. Margaret from 1A is coming with her husband, Mrs. Patterson announced. They'll bring their grandson. He's 12 and strong enough to help move things. Carol in 2D is bringing flashlights. The Johnsons in 3B are checking their garage for work gloves. We'll have a proper search party within the hour. Thomas looked overwhelmed. I can't believe people are doing this. They don't even know me. They know what it's like to need help, Mrs. Patterson said simply. That's enough. Mrs. Chen stood up. I'll make more coffee. People will want something warm. I'll help, Rachel offered, and Sophie immediately joined her. The two girls disappeared into the kitchen, already inseparable. Daniel sat down next to Thomas. How are you holding up? I don't know, Thomas admitted. Part of me is grateful. Part of me is embarrassed. I've been in this building 2 years and kept to myself. Now everyone's dropping everything on Christmas to help me search for a Christmas ornament. It feels wrong. Why? Because I never helped them. I never even introduced myself properly. I just worked and came home and tried to survive. I wasn't a good neighbor. Neither was I, Daniel pointed out. But Mrs. Patterson doesn't seem to care about that. She's not keeping score. She's just seeing a need and meeting it. Maybe that's what community actually means. Not keeping track of who owes what, but just showing up when someone needs help. A knock at the door interrupted them. Daniel opened it to find a couple in their 50s standing there with a teenage boy. The woman held a plate of Christmas cookies. We're the Petersons from 1A, she said. Margaret and Harold. This is our grandson Justin. Mrs. Patterson called about the ornament search. More people arrived over the next 30 minutes. Each person brought something. Work gloves, flashlights, garbage bags, snacks. By the time they gathered in the parking lot behind the building, there were 15 people ready to help. Thomas stood among them, visibly struggling with emotion. Mrs. Patterson took charge. All right, everyone. We're looking for a felt angel ornament with yellow yarn hair and a white dress. It may have been thrown away 2 days ago, which means it could be in any of these 6 dumpsters. We'll split into teams. Be careful, use gloves, and if you find anything that looks promising, call out. They divided into groups. Daniel and Thomas took one dumpster. The Petersons took another. Mrs. Chen supervised the girls, who insisted on helping by organizing the items people removed. It was messy, cold work, but no one complained. Instead, people talked and laughed, sharing their own Christmas memories and stories. Harold Peterson called out after 20 minutes. Got something. Looks like donation bags. Everyone gathered around as he pulled out several bags marked for a local thrift store. Thomas opened them carefully, checking each item. Children's books, old clothes, kitchen items. Then, in the third bag, wrapped in newspaper, he found it. The angel ornament. That's it, he breathed. That's the one. Sophie screamed with joy and ran to her father. He knelt down, showing her the ornament. It was dusty but intact, the felt still soft, the lace still delicate. Yellow yarn hair framed a painted face with a gentle smile. Sophie held it like it was made of gold. Mom's angel, she whispered. We found it. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Margaret Peterson wiped tears from her eyes. Justin grinned, proud to have been part of something meaningful. Mrs. Patterson looked satisfied, like a general whose battle plan had succeeded. But the morning wasn't over. As they cleaned up, Margaret Peterson pulled Thomas aside. Daniel, standing nearby, couldn't help but overhear. "My husband manages the warehouse for a medical supply company," Margaret said. "We're always looking for good workers. The pay is better than hospital janitorial work, and it's day shift. Benefits too. If you're interested, Harold could set up an interview." Thomas stared at her. "Are you serious? Why would you do that for me?" "Because you're a good father trying to do right by your daughter," Margaret said simply. "Because everyone deserves a chance. Because Harold and I remember being young and struggling. Someone helped us once. Now we help others. That's how it works." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come in Monday morning at 9. Harold will introduce you to the hiring manager. The rest is up to you." Thomas looked at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. "Say yes," Daniel urged. "Don't turn down a blessing." "Yes," Thomas said, his voice shaking. "Yes, thank you. I'll be there." More neighbors stepped forward with offers. Carol from 2D was a retired teacher who offered to tutor Sophie for free. "Keep her skills sharp while having fun," she said. "I miss teaching. She'd be doing me a favor." The Johnsons, a young couple in 3B, offered to babysit. "We're trying to have kids," the wife said. "Practice would be good. And we work from home, so we're flexible." One by one, solutions appeared for problems Thomas had thought were unsolvable. Someone knew about a program that provided free after-school care. Someone else mentioned a food bank that distributed fresh produce weekly. Someone suggested a community center with cheap activities for kids. Daniel watched Thomas's face cycle through disbelief, gratitude, and overwhelm. He understood that feeling. When you'd been drowning alone for so long, the sudden appearance of lifelines felt surreal. By noon, they'd gathered back in Daniel's apartment. The angel ornament sat carefully on the coffee table where everyone could admire it. Sophie and Rachel played quietly, still thrilled by the morning's success. The adults sat around drinking coffee and eating the cookies people had brought. "I don't understand why you're all doing this," Thomas said. "But thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." "We're doing it because that's what people should do," Harold Peterson said. "Look after each other. Build community. My grandson is growing up in a world that feels more divided every day. I want him to see that kindness still exists. That people still help people. You're giving us that chance." Justin nodded in agreement. This was the coolest Christmas morning ever. Way better than just opening presents. Mrs. Patterson smiled. "That's what Christmas is supposed to be about. Not stuff, but connection. Love. Hope." Monday morning arrived too quickly. Daniel found himself as nervous as Thomas, who stood in the bathroom practicing how to introduce himself. Rachel and Sophie sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, already planning a play date for after school. "You're going to do great," Daniel assured Thomas. "Just be yourself. Tell them about your work ethic, your reliability. Let them see who you are." Thomas adjusted his tie, borrowed from Daniel. "I haven't interviewed for a job in 5 years. What if I mess this up?" "You won't. And even if you do, it's not the only opportunity. But Thomas, you have to believe you deserve this. You have to believe good things can happen." Thomas met his eyes in the mirror. "I'm trying. It's hard to believe after so long struggling." "I know. But look at the last few days. A week ago, you and I were strangers. Sophie was searching through dumpsters alone. You felt hopeless. Now look. Friendships, opportunities, community. Things can change fast when you let people in." A knock at the door announced Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen, both ready to watch the girls while Thomas and Daniel headed to the warehouse. Daniel had insisted on driving Thomas, offering moral support. The two men said goodbye to their daughters and headed out. The warehouse was on the east side of Nashville, a large industrial building surrounded by loading docks. Harold Peterson met them at the entrance, smiling warmly. "Right on time. That's a good sign. Come on, I'll introduce you to Frank Miller, the operations manager." They wound through the warehouse floor, past workers organizing medical supplies, loading trucks, managing inventory. Thomas took it all in, his expression thoughtful. Daniel could see him imagining himself in this environment. Day shift. Regular hours. Decent pay. Frank Miller turned out to be a no-nonsense man in his 50s with kind eyes. He shook Thomas's hand firmly. Harold says good things about you. Says you're reliable, hard-working, great with your daughter. That right? Yes, sir, Thomas said. I've been working nights as a hospital janitor for 2 years. Never missed a shift. Never been late. I learn fast and I'm not afraid of hard work. Why do you want to leave the hospital? I need day hours, Thomas said honestly. My daughter is 8. I'm missing her whole childhood because I'm gone when she's awake and sleeping when she's home. I need to be more present. And the hospital job doesn't have benefits. My daughter needs health insurance. Frank nodded approvingly. I appreciate the honesty. A lot of people would make up some story about career ambitions. You're telling me what really matters. Family. That's good. We value family here. Harold, show him the warehouse. Let him see what we do. Thomas, I'll check your references this afternoon. If they check out, you can start Wednesday. Wednesday. Thomas repeated, stunned. This Wednesday. Is that too soon? No, sir. That's perfect. Thank you. Frank smiled. Don't thank me yet. This is hard work. Long days. But it's honest pay for honest labor. Now go with Harold. I'll call you this afternoon. Outside, Thomas leaned against Daniel's car, breathing hard. Did that just happen? Did I just get a job? Pending references, Daniel reminded him. But yay, that just happened. I can't believe it. Day shift. Benefits. Better pay. Daniel, this changes everything. I can spend evenings with Sophie. I can help with homework. I can be the dad I've wanted to be. You're already that dad, Daniel said. This just makes it easier. They drove back in high spirits. Thomas called the hospital from the car, giving his 2 weeks' notice. The supervisor was disappointed but understanding. When they arrived back at Daniel's apartment, they found all 4 women and both girls decorating sugar cookies. How did it go? Mrs. Patterson demanded. He got the job, Daniel announced. Pending references, but Frank Miller seemed confident. The room erupted in celebration. Sophie threw herself at her father, and he caught her, spinning her around. Rachel clapped, happy for her new friend. Mrs. Chen smiled with quiet satisfaction. Mrs. Patterson nodded like she'd expected nothing less. I told you, she said. Doors open when you're ready to walk through them. That afternoon, Frank Miller called. Thomas's references had checked out. The job was his, starting Wednesday. The hourly rate was 30% higher than his hospital pay, with full benefits starting after 90 days. Thomas hung up and just sat for a moment, overwhelmed. What's wrong? Sophie asked, concerned. Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything is right. For the first time in so long, everything feels right. Tuesday was spent preparing. Thomas gave notice to Mrs. Chen, thanking her for her help but explaining he'd need different arrangements now. Mrs. Chen seemed relieved, admitting that keeping up with Sophie's energy had become challenging. The Johnsons from 3B confirmed they could watch Sophie after school 3 days a week. Carol offered to tutor her the other 2 days. A schedule emerged that worked for everyone. Daniel helped Thomas shop for work clothes, refusing to let him refuse the loan. You'll pay me back when you can, Daniel insisted. Right now, you need to look professional. Let me help. They bought sturdy pants, good boots, and several polo shirts. Simple, practical, but nice enough for the job. Thomas kept shaking his head in disbelief. A week ago, I was alone and desperate. Now I have friends, a better job, childcare, and hope. How did this happen so fast? Sometimes that's how life works, Daniel said. You struggle and struggle, then suddenly everything shifts. The key is recognizing the shift and being grateful for it. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful I don't know how to express it. Then don't, Daniel said. Just live it. Be the dad you want to be. Help someone else when you can. Pay it forward. That's how gratitude works best. Wednesday morning, Thomas wore his new work clothes. He looked different. More confident. More hopeful. He kissed Sophie goodbye and headed to his first day at the warehouse. Daniel texted him throughout the day, checking in. Each response was positive. The work was manageable. The people were friendly. He was learning fast. When Thomas came home that evening, he was tired but smiling. Sophie ran to greet him, and for the first time in 2 years, he wasn't too exhausted to play with her. They sat on the floor of his apartment, building with blocks, talking about their days. Normal evening activities that felt like miracles because they'd been impossible for so long. Later that night, Thomas called Daniel. "Thank you. For everything. For finding Sophie. For bringing us into your life. For believing things could get better. I was drowning, and you threw me a rope." "You threw yourself that rope by accepting help," Daniel corrected. "That's the hard part. I just happened to be there." "Still, thank you." "You're welcome. Now get some rest. You've got work tomorrow." They hung up, and Daniel sat in his quiet apartment, Rachel asleep in her room. He thought about how much had changed in 1 week. He'd gone from isolated to connected, from surviving to thriving. Thomas had gone from desperate to hopeful. 2 little girls had found friendship, and a community had discovered itself. Mrs. Patterson had been right. Sometimes people meet exactly when they're supposed to. Sometimes doors open at exactly the right moment. Sometimes all you have to do is walk through them. 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine and growing friendship. Thomas thrived at his new job, earning praise from Frank Miller for his work ethic and attention to detail. Sophie bloomed with the stability of her father's new schedule. Rachel and Sophie were inseparable. Daniel found himself cooking dinner for 4 most nights, their apartments functioning as a shared space. Then one Saturday morning, Sophie made a discovery that sent everyone into action again. She'd been playing with the angel ornament, which now hung on a special place on Thomas's small Christmas tree, when she noticed something. A tiny piece of paper tucked inside the felt. "Dad, look," she called. "There's something inside Mom's angel." Thomas carefully extracted the paper. It was a note, written in his late wife's handwriting. His hand shook as he read it aloud. "To whoever finds this someday. This angel represents hope, love, and family. If you found it, you probably need those things. Keep searching. There are more angels hidden around Nashville, each with a blessing inside. Find them all, and you'll find treasure more valuable than money. Love, Catherine Bennett." Thomas's voice broke on his wife's name. "I never knew she did this. She must have hidden this note before she got too sick. She was always doing things like that. Little surprises. Games. She loved treasure hunts." Sophie's eyes widened. "Mom made more angels. And hid them? We have to find them." Daniel leaned forward, intrigued. "Do you know how many she made?" "She used to make dozens for craft fairs," Thomas said. "But special ones? Family ones? I don't know. She had a craft room at our old house before we downsized. Maybe there are records there. Can we go look?" Sophie asked. "I sold that house," Thomas said slowly. "The new owners live there now. I can't just show up and ask to search their home." Mrs. Patterson, who'd come over for Saturday morning coffee, shook her head. "Of course you can. You explained the situation. Most people are understanding. What's the address? I'll make some calls." Within an hour, Mrs. Patterson had tracked down the current owners, a young family named the Williamses. She'd explained the situation, and they'd invited Thomas and Sophie to come search the craft room. The whole group piled into Daniel's car and Harold Peterson's truck and headed across town. The house was a modest ranch in a quiet neighborhood. The Williamses, a couple in their 30s with twin toddlers, greeted them warmly. "We've heard so much about the previous owners," Mrs. Williams said. "The neighbors still talk about Catherine's kindness. She'd bake for everyone. We found some of her recipes in the kitchen drawer. We've been using them." Thomas's eyes misted. She loved baking. "Thank you for keeping her recipes alive." Mrs. Williams led them to what had been Catherine's craft room. It was now a playroom for the twins, but they'd left the built-in shelving intact. Thomas stood in the doorway, clearly overwhelmed by memories. "Take your time," Mr. Williams said kindly. "Search any way you need to." They spent 2 hours going through shelves, checking behind furniture, looking in every possible hiding spot. Sophie found a box in the back of the closet labeled Angel Project. Inside was sketches, notes, and a list of locations. "Dad, look." Sophie spread the papers on the floor. There were drawings of 12 different angel ornaments, each slightly different. Next to each drawing was a location: Community Center Garden, Public Library Children's Section, St. Mary's Church Basement, Riverside Park Oak Tree, and others. Thomas read through the list, his expression a mixture of joy and sorrow. She planned this whole thing. A citywide treasure hunt. She must have hidden these the year before she got sick. I never knew. Why would she do this? Rachel asked. Because she believed in spreading joy, Thomas said. Even knowing she might not be here to see it. She wanted to leave something beautiful behind. Something that would bring people together. Mrs. Williams brought them lemonade while they studied the list. "This is wonderful," she said. "Like a real-life treasure hunt. Can we help search? Our kids are too young, but it sounds like an adventure." "Everyone can help," Mrs. Patterson declared. "This is exactly the kind of project our community needs. We'll organize search teams for each location." They returned to the apartment building with the list and the sketches. Word spread quickly. By evening, they had volunteers from throughout the building ready to participate. The next day, Sunday, they divided into teams and set out across Nashville. Daniel, Thomas, and the girls took the public library. They searched the children's section for an hour, checking behind books, under tables, inside the reading nook. Finally, Rachel found it tucked behind a loose board in the reading nook bench. A felt angel with red yarn hair and a green dress. Inside was another note: "You found patience and persistence. True treasure." At the community center garden, Harold and Margaret Peterson found an angel buried in a waterproof container beneath the rose bushes. This one had brown yarn hair and a blue dress. Its note read, "You found growth and beauty. True treasure." By the end of the day, they'd found 5 of the 12 angels. Each location brought neighbors together, working as teams, celebrating each discovery. People who'd never spoken before were laughing and planning together. Catherine's treasure hunt was doing exactly what she'd intended, bringing community together. The search continued over the following week. The Johnsons found an angel at Riverside Park. Carol discovered one at St. Mary's Church. Each angel came with its own note about different virtues: kindness, generosity, faith, courage, love. Sophie kept all the angels they found in a special box, treating them like the treasures they were. Thomas read each note repeatedly, marveling at his late wife's foresight and love. "She knew," he said to Daniel. "She knew I'd need community after she was gone. She knew Sophie would need friends. She created something that would force us to connect with others. That was her final gift." By the end of the second week, they'd found 11 of the 12 angels. The last location on the list was mysteriously blank, just a question mark. They'd searched everywhere else twice, unable to figure out the final hiding spot. "Maybe it doesn't exist," Sophie suggested. "Maybe Mom only made 11. But Thomas shook his head. "Your mother finished what she started. That 12th angel is somewhere. We just have to figure out where." They gathered in Daniel's apartment one evening, all the volunteers who'd participated in the search. 15 people crowded into the small space, studying the sketches and notes, trying to decipher the mystery. Mrs. Patterson studied the final sketch. "This angel looks different. More elaborate. The dress has a pattern, not just one color. And look, there's something embroidered on it. Can anyone make it out?" They passed around the sketch. Finally, young Justin Peterson spoke up. "It looks like an address. See, those numbers could be house numbers." They all leaned in closer. Sure enough, embroidered on the angel's dress in the sketch were numbers. 321. 321, Daniel repeated. "That's not an address. That's our building," Thomas finished. 321, 3 floors, 2 sections, 1 community. Everyone looked at each other in realization. The final angel was hidden somewhere in their own apartment building. The revelation that the final angel was hidden in their own building sent everyone into excited motion. They'd searched Nashville's parks, churches, and libraries, never realizing the lost treasure was right under their noses. The hunt took on new energy as neighbors searched common areas, checked maintenance closets, examined every corner of their home. 3 days passed with no success. Frustration grew. They'd come so far, found 11 angels, solved 11 riddles. The 12th seemed impossible. Then Mrs. Chen had an insight. She called everyone together in the lobby on Saturday afternoon. "I've been thinking about Catherine's message," she said. "About community. About 321. What if the numbers mean something else? 3 families? 2 girls? 1 community." "That's poetic," Margaret Peterson said. "But how does that help us find the angel?" Mrs. Chen smiled mysteriously. "Follow me." She led them to the building's small courtyard, an area most residents ignored. It was just a patch of grass with a sad-looking bench and a struggling tree. Mrs. Chen pointed to the tree. "This was planted 10 years ago when the building renovated," she said. "Previous tenant initiative. I was here. I remember. And I remember Catherine Bennett was one of the people who helped plant it. She called it the community tree. Said it would grow as the community grew." Thomas stepped forward, examining the tree more closely. It was winter, so the branches were bare, but at the base, partially hidden by dead leaves, was a small waterproof container. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was the 12th angel. This one was the most beautiful yet. Its dress was made from a patchwork of different colored felts, pieces from each of the other 11 angels. Its hair was every color of yarn mixed together. It represented unity, diversity, and community all in one small ornament. The note inside was longer than the others. "You found all 12 angels. You worked together. You built relationships. You created community. These are the real treasures. Money comes and goes. Jobs change. Houses are just buildings. But people who care about each other, who help each other, who show up for each other, that's wealth that lasts forever. Thank you for honoring my memory by finding these. Thank you for becoming the family I knew you could be. Love, Catherine." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtyard. Thomas held the angel like it was made of glass. Sophie pressed against his side. Daniel put a hand on his friend's shoulder. Mrs. Patterson wiped her eyes with her ever-present handkerchief. "She knew," Thomas whispered. "She knew what we'd need. She knew we'd find each other." 12 angels, Mrs. Patterson said softly. 12 opportunities to work together. 12 chances to build friendships. She was a wise woman. They decided to display all 12 angels in the building's lobby, where everyone could see them. Margaret Peterson's husband built a beautiful case with 12 hooks. They hung the ornaments carefully, each one representing a different aspect of their journey together. Under the case, they mounted a plaque in memory of Catherine Bennett, who taught us that the greatest treasures are the people we love and the communities we build. The display became a building landmark. Neighbors who'd participated in the search would stop to look at it, remembering the adventures they'd shared. New residents would ask about it, and the story would be told again, keeping Catherine's memory and message alive. But the greatest miracle came 2 weeks later. Frank Miller, Thomas's boss, called him into the office. Thomas went nervously, worried he'd done something wrong despite consistently good performance reviews. "Sit down, Thomas," Frank said. "I've been impressed with your work. More than impressed. You're reliable, hard-working, and good with people. The team likes you. Customers like you. You're exactly the kind of employee we want to promote." Thomas blinked. "Promote? We're opening a new warehouse across town. We need a floor supervisor. Better pay, more responsibility, but also more stability. It's yours if you want it." "I've only been here 6 weeks," Thomas stammered. "And in those 6 weeks, you've proven yourself. Sometimes you just know when someone's the right fit. So what do you say?" "Yes," Thomas said immediately. "Absolutely yes. Thank you. Thank your friend Harold. He vouched for you. Said you were the kind of man who'd walk through fire for the people you care about. That's the kind of supervisor we need." That evening, Thomas shared the news with everyone gathered in Daniel's apartment, which had become their unofficial community center. The cheers and congratulations were genuine and loud. Sophie hugged her father, pride shining in her eyes. "We should celebrate," Mrs. Patterson declared. "A proper party. This building hasn't had a real party in years." They planned it for the following Saturday. Every resident was invited. The Petersons brought their grandson. The Johnsons set up music. Carol organized games for the kids. Mrs. Chen made enough food to feed an army. Daniel and Thomas grilled in the courtyard, despite the cold, because that's what you do at celebrations. Over 50 people showed up, from babies to seniors. The lobby was decorated with streamers and balloons. The 12 angels watched over everything from their special case. Music played, food was shared, stories were told. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. It was community in action. During the party, Daniel found himself standing with Thomas, watching their daughters play with a group of other children. Sophie was teaching Rachel a hand-clapping game. Both girls were laughing, their faces bright with joy. "A month ago, I was alone," Thomas said quietly. "Working myself to death. Watching my daughter suffer. No hope. No help. No community. Look at this now. Look at what one act of kindness started." "You finding Sophie searching through trash," Daniel said. "You not walking away," Thomas corrected. "You could have called the police and gone back upstairs. Instead, you helped. You invited us in. You offered friendship when I'd forgotten how to accept it." "We helped each other," Daniel said. "That's what makes it real." Mrs. Patterson joined them, her plate piled high with food. "Look at this. Look at what we built. A month ago, most people in this building were strangers. Now we're family. That's what Catherine wanted. That's what her angels helped us find." "The angels were just ornaments," Thomas said. "Beautiful, meaningful, but just objects. The real treasure was the journey. The searching together. The working together. The caring about each other." "Exactly," Mrs. Patterson agreed. Catherine knew that. She knew that giving people a reason to connect would transform everyone involved. She was right. The party continued late into the night. As it wound down and people drifted to their apartments, Daniel stood with Thomas in the courtyard by the community tree. Snow had started falling again, gentle flakes that caught the light from the lobby windows. "Thank you," Thomas said for probably the 100th time. "For everything. For being the friend I didn't know I needed." "Same," Daniel replied simply. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall. Inside, they could hear laughter and music fading. Rachel and Sophie were having a sleepover at Mrs. Patterson's apartment, giving both men a rare night of peace. Instead of appreciating the solitude, they'd chosen to stay together, talking and planning and dreaming about the future. "I'm going to pay it forward," Thomas said suddenly. "Everything people did for me. The job opportunity. The childcare help. The friendship. I'm going to do that for someone else. That's how this works, right? You receive grace, then you give it." "That's exactly how it works," Daniel agreed. "And I'll do the same. We both will. That's how community stays strong. Everyone giving what they can, receiving what they need, and passing it along." They headed inside, stopping by the angel display one more time. 12 small felt ornaments hung in their case, each one a reminder of love, community, and the power of bringing people together. Thomas touched the glass gently. "Rest well, Catherine," he whispered. "Your plan worked. We found the treasure. All of it." Spring arrived in Nashville with an explosion of color. The community tree in the courtyard, once sad and struggling, had sprouted new growth. Someone had planted flowers around its base. The courtyard had transformed from an ignored space into a gathering place where neighbors met for coffee and conversation. 6 months had passed since that Christmas Eve when Daniel found Sophie searching through dumpsters. 6 months of friendship, growth, and transformation. Thomas was thriving as warehouse supervisor, earning enough to move to a larger apartment in the same building. Sophie was confident and happy, her grades improving with Carol's tutoring and the stability of her father's new schedule. Rachel had found a best friend who understood loss and resilience. Daniel's freelance business had grown too. With the support of his new community, he'd found the confidence to raise his rates and pursue bigger clients. He'd always been talented, but had doubted himself. Thomas and the others had helped him see his worth. One Saturday morning in May, they gathered in the courtyard for a special event. The building residents had decided to make the Angel Treasure Hunt an annual tradition. They created new ornaments, written new riddles, and planned to hide them around Nashville for other families to find. Catherine's legacy would continue, spreading joy and bringing people together year after year. I think she'd love this, Thomas said, watching residents prepare the ornaments. Sophie and Rachel were carefully wrapping each one, treating them with reverence. She'd be proud of you, Mrs. Patterson said. Of how you've built a life here. Of the father you've become. I was always trying to be a good father, Thomas said. I just needed the right support system. You all gave me that. You gave Sophie and me a chance when we were drowning. A new family was moving into the building that week. Single mother with 2 kids. Mrs. Patterson had already organized a welcome committee. The Petersons were gathering furniture donations. Daniel and Thomas were planning to help with the move. Carol was offering tutoring for the kids. The cycle of kindness continued, growing and expanding with each new person who joined their community. That's going to be the best part, Daniel said, watching the preparations. Getting to pay it forward. Getting to be for someone else what everyone was for us. Thomas nodded. I was so angry after Catherine died. Angry at God, at the world, at life. I couldn't see any point to the suffering. But now I understand. The suffering made me humble enough to accept help. It broke me down so I could be built back up stronger. It brought me here, to this community, to these friendships. I wouldn't wish the journey on anyone, but I'm grateful for where it led. That's faith, Mrs. Patterson said. Not believing bad things won't happen, but trusting that good can come from them anyway. That's the treasure Catherine wanted you to find. Not just community, but hope. Not just friendship, but faith that life can get better. The afternoon was spent hiding ornaments around Nashville. They worked in teams, just like during the original search. Each hiding spot was carefully chosen, each riddle crafted with love. They included a phone number on each ornament's note, inviting finders to call and join the community of searchers. By evening, all 24 new ornaments were hidden. They gathered back at the building for dinner, another potluck that had become their regular Saturday tradition. The courtyard was full of tables, food, music, and laughter. Children ran around playing tag. Adults talked and joked and shared stories. It felt like family, because that's what they'd become. Daniel stood with Thomas, watching it all with satisfaction. I keep thinking about that night, Daniel admitted. What if I hadn't looked out my window? What if I'd ignored what I saw? What if I'd called the police instead of going down myself? Then neither of us would be here, Thomas said. Not really. We'd still be surviving, but not thriving. We'd still be alone. That one choice, that moment of caring about a stranger, changed everything. For both of us, Daniel agreed. I was just as isolated as you were. Just as stuck. Helping you helped me. That's the secret, isn't it? We think we're independent, but we're actually all connected. What we do for others, we do for ourselves. The community we build around us supports us too. Young Justin Peterson ran up, breathless with excitement. Mr. Carter, Mr. Bennett, we just got a call. Someone found one of the ornaments already. A family from East Nashville. They want to know if they can join us next week. Of course they can, Thomas said. That's the whole point. Tell them Saturday at 5. Potluck. Everyone's welcome. Justin ran off to relay the message. Thomas smiled, shaking his head in wonder. It's already working. Catherine's vision is spreading beyond our building. Soon it'll be all of Nashville. Then maybe beyond. Who knows how far kindness can spread when you give it room to grow. As the sun set, the courtyard lights came on, strung by Harold Peterson months ago specifically for these gatherings. Sophie and Rachel sat with a group of other kids, still inseparable after 6 months. They'd grown taller, more confident, more joyful. The benefits of stability and friendship showed in every smile. Mrs. Patterson clinked her glass for attention. I'd like to say something. When I moved into this building 20 years ago, it was just an apartment complex. People came and went. We were polite but distant. Over the years, I watched families struggle alone. I watched people lose jobs, lose hope, lose faith. I tried to help where I could, but one old woman can only do so much. Then something changed last Christmas. 2 families found each other in a moment of need. From that connection, a real community was born. Now look at us. We're not just neighbors anymore. We're family. We look out for each other. We celebrate together and struggle together. That's what home is supposed to feel like. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for having the courage to accept help and the wisdom to pass it along. You've transformed all our lives. Everyone applauded. Thomas stood, uncomfortable with attention, but grateful for the sentiment. Mrs. Patterson is too kind. The truth is, everyone here played a part. Every person who helped search for that ornament. Everyone who offered a job tip or babysitting help or just friendship. You all saved my life. You all gave Sophie and me a reason to hope again. Catherine planted the seeds with her angel project, but you all made them grow. That's the real miracle. Not finding ornaments, but finding each other. More applause. Daniel added, and it's not over. This is just the beginning. Every new family we welcome. Every person we help. Every time we choose connection over isolation. That's how we honor Catherine's memory and build something lasting. That's how we make sure no one feels as alone as Thomas and I once did. The party continued late into the night. Eventually people drifted to their apartments, but no one seemed in a hurry to leave. This community they'd built was too precious, too rare, too valuable to take for granted. Daniel and Thomas were the last to leave the courtyard, making sure everything was cleaned up. They stood by the community tree one final time, looking at the building that had become so much more than just a place to live. Next Christmas, we should do something special, Thomas said. Maybe display all the angels again. Make it an annual tradition. I like that, Daniel agreed. Keep Catherine's memory alive. Keep the message spreading. They headed inside, stopping by the lobby to look at the original 12 angels in their case. The ornaments looked the same as always, but their meaning had deepened over the months. They represented more than just a treasure hunt now. They represented transformation, redemption, community, and love. You know what I'm most grateful for? Thomas asked. Beyond the job and the friends and the stability, I'm grateful that Sophie will grow up knowing what community means. She'll know that people help each other, that kindness is real, that hope isn't foolish. Those lessons will shape her whole life. That's Catherine's greatest gift, really. Not just to me, but to our daughter. She's growing up in a village that loves her. Rachel too, Daniel said. She was so angry when her mother left. So hurt and confused. But this community showed her that family is more than blood. It's about showing up, caring, being present. She's healing because of what we've all built together. They went their separate ways to their apartments, but the connection remained. Tomorrow they'd have breakfast together. Sophie and Rachel would play while Thomas and Daniel drank coffee and talked about their week. Mrs. Patterson would probably stop by with leftover cookies. Mrs. Chen would call to invite them to lunch. The Petersons would mention a movie they should all see together. The rhythm of community, steady and sustaining. In his apartment, Daniel checked on Rachel. She was asleep, her face peaceful. Her room was filled with artwork she created, photos of friends, small treasures from their adventures. This was what a healed heart looked like. This was what support and love produced. He sat in his living room, looking at the small angel ornament Catherine had made, the first one they'd found at the library. Thomas had given it to him as a thank you gift. It sat on his bookshelf, a daily reminder of how much life could change when you opened yourself to connection.